The date was October 20th, 1991. Grandpa and I had moved into the house a year and a half before the fire. We had originally lived on Campus Drive in Berkeley, which was my house before I met Grandpa. And we moved here because we were interested in downsizing. And a little humor there, right?
We sure did.
We sure downsized.
Yeah.
And we were interested in scaling down, not having so much stuff and not having so much to take care of. So we thought a townhouse up here would be a great idea. And about 4 or 5 months before we moved, I moved my office over to Rockridge so that my work would be near the house, which in fact it now is. So it's a very, very hot, incredibly hot, windy day. And we are preparing for your great-grandma Edie's birthday party. And she was here with her caretaker, Fanny, and they were staying at the Claremont because she could no longer handle the stairs here. She had very severe Parkinson's disease. So she came with her caretaker, and we were preparing for a party which was to start at 1 o'clock. So here we are on this boiling hot day, and Peter and Ann and Lizzie and Hannah. Lizzie, I think you were 4. I don't know, we'd have to figure out the actual numbers. And Hannah was just handheld, very, very, very young. And the 4 of them were across the street at the swimming pool at the clubhouse when the fire just happened. And Anne, Lizzie and Hannah's mom, had been a firefighter. That's how she put herself through Santa Cruz. She was a firefighter every summer, and she knew exactly what was happening. So she said to Pete and to the girls, "We're leaving. We got to get back." They came running up the back way because they didn't have time to go all the way around. And they came into the house just screaming, "Grandma and Grandpa, get out of here. There's a huge fire." Meanwhile, the sky had turned black. And I looked out and I thought it was a nuclear holocaust. I mean, that was how incredibly dark it was. And this high wind, you just never smelled air like that. And I mean, it must have been 105 degrees, the heat of the fire. And the fire started right up here. If you go uphill or drive to Charing Cross, which is just 3 blocks up, that's where it began. And the wind, which was, I don't know, it was traveling. They said how many miles an hour it was traveling. It was huge. It was a Santa Ana, and that doesn't usually happen here. It just swept down the hill.
What started it?
It was started by some people had been doing some work in their home. Some workmen had been doing some construction or fixing up of something, and the fire had started the day before, and the Oakland Police Department thought that it had been put out. There were helicopters flying all around the day before. I mean, it was eerie. It was eerie.
Carrying water bags, which they'd empty out over the fire.
So what I remember is Peter and Ann and the girls coming into the house, and they needed to get their clothes, so they went downstairs because they were wet, and they had been staying here overnight, and they said to us, "Get out of here." And I remember sitting with Lizzie in my arms, and she was just shaking. She was just terrified. And Hannah was downstairs with her parents. And they fled. And they said to us, "Get out of here." So we had no time. By the time we left, the fire was already on the deck and on the roof. I mean, there were flames. And I thought about going downstairs. It's not like you think exactly. The thought was, we got to get out of here.
Yeah, if we had thought, we would have realized that we should have emptied the walls of the photographs and gotten them into a car, right?
Yeah, but we didn't have time.
I think we had time. I think we just did other things. But
made a few phone calls, including to the caterer.
You see, we could have saved.
Yes, we could have. Yeah, we could have.
Yeah, John's response and mine were a little different. I kept minimizing the effect of the fire and giving more credit to the fire department than they deserved.
Because they weren't anywhere in sight. There was
They
nothing.
were down at the bottom of the hill waiting for orders to come up. And other towns sent fire equipment, and they didn't get permission either. So...
but nothing actually could have stopped it anyway. I mean, they stopped at some few places. They stopped it at the Claremont. Because they decided to make a firewall there, that they had to save the Claremont because it's a tinderbox, and all of Berkeley could have gone. So that was where they focused their attention.
If the wind had continued in the same direction, it was aimed right at Berkeley.
There's a cute little story. There are two really cute stories. One is that I totally knew that nothing was going to save this house. It was just quite clear to me. And I also knew...
And I was certain that the fire department would show up, That's what they're supposed to do, right? And then we realized we heard no sirens. We heard no sounds coming from down there. I remember one guy, I think
the guy next door.
Howard. Howard lived alone. Howard came out of his house to look around, and
he said something like, "Do you think it's time to close down now?" Or something like that. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so you chased him back.
I said, "Get your butt out of here. Go." So that was one story. And then you said Robin was doing little pirouettes out in the street. I mean, people were in shock and in a daze. I, on the other hand, was very mobilized. And I said to Bob had this book on his computer.
Oh, yeah.
And this book, meaning family, this book, the memory triggering book, which all of you know well. And I said, get your hard drive and get out of here. And meanwhile, I ran to the bookshelf, which was at that time over here. This house is differently configured than our first house. And I wasn't thinking, but I grabbed my doctoral dissertation. Like
But you need like a whole head.
Yeah, exactly. Like I had copies in my office. They're all over the place, And I grabbed my calendar, which has all my appointments in it, which was sitting right here, and I grabbed my purse. And two of those collapsible files that had income tax information in them. And we never got downstairs, where there were some very valuable things, including the one thing that I wish more than anything I had gone down for was my father's pocket watch, because it's the only thing I had of his. Because he died when I was 6, and I had this pocket watch. Anyway.
Joan was in 3rd gear by the time I really got mobilized, because I moved much more slowly. Always have, always will. And I was pretending that everything was going to be okay.
Which is your one?
Yeah, it's my mode, and it's worked so far. It didn't work then. So So I mobilized very slowly. I just sort of waited for my cues from you. Get your hard drive. Okay, that made sense. I got that. I regretted losing the keyboard, which I loved. It just had the right feel.
As certain as I was that we were never going to see this house again, when we left, I locked the door. So you want to talk about crazy ass stuff? That's right up there. So we had two cars, but we got in one of them and we left.
So you talk about something that Joan said on your drive out.
Yeah. Joan said, "What are we supposed to learn from this?"
Yeah.
And damned if I knew.
It was so out of the ordinary. It was so extraordinary. And some part of me, some spiritual, psychological, both part of me, just knew there was something bigger in this that I didn't know yet what it was, but I knew it was. Mm-hmm. And indeed it was. 19 years later, I think, for me at least, there's been some crystallization of the learning. And maybe it'll take me my whole life to really... But I think there are ways that I've incorporated the impermanence of this life into my being as a result of this that has been pretty interesting for me. Very interesting for me. We got down in front of the Claremont and we thought about going in to get my mom, but our car, it was too crowded. There was so much traffic and people were getting stuck going down. Some cars blew up because the fire.
Mm-hmm.
Some people lost their lives that way.
Right across the road. And, it wasn't very high, but some people thought they could just drive through it.
And some people did.
Yeah, some people got through, but some didn't.
We left and we went to very dear friends, and to Roz and Andres. And Roz is the person who had introduced us, and dear friends who live down in the Elmwood. And I remember her wrapping me up in one of her Pashima shawls. It was so hot, but I was like, I don't know, I was just freezing from shock. And at first they were just taking good care of us and all the rest. And then there was some question whether the fire was going to come to their house. And their neighbors were on the roof looking at it, and they started to pack their stuff. And it didn't ever get to their house.
Well, we're going to have to make another stop before we get out of here.
Well, meanwhile, we called my mom. I can't remember just what the deal was, but she had, other good friends had come, Leslie and John, had come to take her, and they took her in a wheelchair to their house from the Claremont, because they didn't know the Claremont was going to be saved. So somehow we hooked up with them, and then we went over to Leslie and John's and picked up Edie and Fanny, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody was just in this.
Where did they stay that night? I don't remember.
At the Claremont. Or they went right back. No, they were there. They stayed at the Claremont because the Claremont was okay. And she left the next day. We said, I think you need to get out of here.
I think I didn't feel it as much as you did, because I didn't let it all in. That's a very guy thing to do,
Well, it came in more slowly. You metabolized it more slowly than I did.
Yeah.
So we went to Leslie and John's, picked up my mom, and we went over to my son's house, to Doug's. And there was Andre, who was just a baby. Maybe he was 2. Yeah, he would be 2 then, or a year and a half. And I remember Lisba and Don bringing Chinese food over for us. My cousin. And Then we got a call from our friends Barbara and Russell, who also had lost their house. They lived up here. And we were all just frantic, and we met them for dinner. And
this is the same day.
This is that afternoon. We met them for an early dinner. I can't remember where we went. The Sizzler or something.
Mm-hmm. That little hotel.
Well, we stayed in a hotel. We stayed in a motel that night, and we didn't sleep. We cried all night. And anyway, the next morning, my oldest son, Jeffrey, shows up at the hotel, says, "Mom, come on. We're going to the insurance company right now." Meanwhile, he had made us a reservation out at the Lafayette Park Hotel, which was where we stayed then for 6 or 7 weeks, with a whole lot of other refugees.
Mm-hmm.
There were many, many fire victims out there, and you could tell because they would be sitting at the breakfast table looking like people from Mars, just space cadets.
Yeah, you could tell the survivors.
No kidding.
Your look.
And weren't they wonderful to us out there? I mean, they really treated us well. So he took me to the AAA office. That's where we had our insurance. And we were the first ones in line. Is this in the chapter?
I don't think so.
I can't remember what we wrote. And we went in and started talking to the agent. And of course, I didn't have, what is your policy number? I don't have any idea. I mean, I didn't have any papers.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a sweetheart of a guy.
Yeah, he developed an instant crush on you.
He did. He did.
Which was very fortunate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, except that he then got transferred off of our case. We moved to a ghastly place where they had fire drills at night.
Oh, what was the address of that place? Oh, Albany.
Yeah, that was the third stop. The first stop was to this little
crappy motel. Awful. That was just one night.
Yeah, like I imagine the Motel 6s used to be like. Luckily, that was just one night.
Right, and then we moved to the Lafayette Park. But we didn't have much to move. I mean, it was just ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
The morning after the fire, I went with Jeff and then came back, and our other good friends were there to take us shopping because we didn't even have a toothbrush.
Mm-hmm.
So I went with my friend Suzanne, and Bob went with our friend Bill, and we got underwear and jammies and a toothbrush, and I got clothes to wear to work the next day. Would you believe I went to work on Tuesday?
Wow.
Yeah, one of the nicer things about it was the way the department stores responded.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, really, I mean, of course, everybody just is essentially themselves. You know what I mean by that?
I do. Mm-hmm.
And my essential self, I mean, I went to work. That's what I do. I had shoes, I had underwear, I remember a brown outfit. I never wear brown. But I remember a Liz Claiborne skirt and jacket that I got with a little shirt under there. And I had 2 outfits to wear. So I went to work on Tuesday, and I think I saw 6 clients. And on Wednesday, I was in my office, and I looked up, and the room was going around like this. I mean, I was complete PTSD, just complete. And I thought I was going to pass out. And I called Bob and I said, I got to get out of here. And I'm afraid to drive. And I don't remember what happened, whether you came and got me. I think you came and got me.
Yeah, I think
I canceled the rest of the week. They finally let us, toward the end of the next week, they let us come and see if there was anything. We would be escorted in. Because there was a whole barricade down at the bottom of the hill.
Mm-hmm.
And an escort would bring us up. And then I remember Emily and Maury came. And we have photos of us going through the rubble. That was eerie.
Yeah, you know, it's sort of like the surface of the moon. I mean, ash everywhere, and surreal, of course. I have some photos somewhere.
Yes, we do.
And, you know, I looked around where the house was, and there were a few surviving things, like a vertical file cabinet, maybe 4 drawers high, that had a lot of papers I considered important.
That was my file cabinet.
No, that was mine. I'm sorry about that.
Well, I had one in there too. I had one with all my academic stuff in it.
I had.
Okay, I guess we both had them.
Yeah, so we both had
Yeah.
cabinets. Dad had some jewelry that were awards for his salesmanship when he sold insurance. And I lost those. I regretted losing them because he had died some years before. We both lost a lot of our photos.
We lost all our photos.
Yeah, it was all.
Everything.
But a lot were replaced by cousins and other relatives who had copies.
There's something on the wall hanging there outside that I think must have been the furnace or hot water heater or something on the other side of the lemon tree. You know, there were a few things that we just kept as art pieces. We went to Mexico with a teacher of ours and with our friends Barbara and Russell, who had lost their house. And I think on that trip to Mexico, which was a training program that we were in, we were very clear that we wanted to come back. We loved being up here. We were going to rebuild. And they were trying to decide whether they should rebuild. And I told them, don't go there, because I knew that their relationship couldn't tolerate it. A lot of relationships fell apart. We felt as if we had fallen into a safety net with our friends. People came out of the woodwork to help us, to do whatever we needed. I mean, it was just amazing. And there was this incredible sense of community and care. And I think it wasn't just for us. I think that the best of Berkeley and this community got called upon in the face of this real disaster. And the fire was on Sunday. And the following Friday night, our friends Leslie and John, who had taken my mom to their house, had a gathering at their house of people who would support us through this. And they called them, and they had a dinner, and people volunteered to do all kinds of things for us. All kinds of things. Did we need help with the insurance? Did we need help buying a new car? There was more detail than you could ever conceivably imagine.
Thousands of things.
Mm-hmm.
I have calendars from those weeks that are just fascinating. They're just filled with to-do lists.
Right.
And including the location of an attorney for us when we realized that on the personal property end, they were going to screw us.
Mm-hmm.
And friends found us this attorney.
We already had a large network of friends and family around us before the fire. really came through. They
Sweet things.
people asked us what we needed, and I talked to some people, and I just asked them to replace some of the things we lost, and if they were theirs, that'd be even better,
But that's a wonderful thing that you just brought up, because do you remember the party that Jeffrey and Judy Klein gave for us?
No.
Well, good friends, younger people, gave us a party, which was an amazing party. Their kids made us crowns and put us in king and queen seats, and everybody invited to the party. Oh, and they said, you have to make a wish list. So we went to Macy's downstairs in the cellar, and we picked out all kinds of stuff that we needed. Dishes and I remember Arlie and Adam gave us a Cuisinart, and everybody came to the party, and it was a blast. It was so much fun. It just felt so supportive. You remember that party now?
Yeah.
About 6 weeks after the fire, maybe 2 months, I have some notes about this. I was asked to be on a panel at Alta Bates Hospital with other therapists who had been hit by the fire, talking about what the internal experience was. And I remember that as being quite interesting, because I had to pull my thoughts together. And that was a really interesting day. A lot of people came. I think that I kept the paper that I gave that day. And I remember Bennett Markle being on that panel, and a couple of other people. In answer to the question that I asked going down the hill, I think one thing that has forever changed for me is my relationship to my physical world, to my possessions. And it's not that I don't like what I have, but I feel a totally different level of attachment than I did then. I mean, I have a ton of my mother's things and my grandmother's, and I thought after the fire, and let me roll back, because this is an interesting story. I had been teaching at Cal, and I wasn't on a tenure track, in a tenure track position. And about 3 months after the fire, I got a call from the dean asking me whether I would be interested in coming back in a tenure track position. And it was a job that 6 months before that I would have grabbed so fast. I mean, it was kind of my ideal job, because he wanted me to teach things I was very, very interested in. And I had not been at the university for a few years. I'd been teaching elsewhere, but not there. And because I lost every piece of my intellectual history in that fire, in that 4-drawer file cabinet, I mean, I had an office, but I didn't have any of my academic stuff at that office. I just had clinical stuff there. And I was so overwhelmed. I knew I could not do it, and he wouldn't wait. I mean, he said, I've got to fill this position now. And so that was a real turning point. I think of life now. I'm 81 years old, and I think of life in terms of paths taken and paths not taken. Well, that was a decisive moment for me in terms of my career and what I would be doing for the last, I was, how old? 60 when the fire happened. So at the time it was kind of painful, but it was also very crystal clear to me that I couldn't do it. I didn't have the energy. I didn't have the fire. And what would have been great a year before had shifted. I mean, our job, it felt to me at that time, and it was right, was to reestablish ourselves, to get ourselves back on track so we could live our lives and be with our kids and our grandkids and our friends, and for me to be able to do what work I had, which was very satisfying. So I think about, and this is beyond the fire, but I think about paths I've taken in my life and in my career, and choices that I've made, and how circumstance sometimes just kind of dictates where you go, and then you got to make sense of it. But I knew it was right. Am I making sense? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're shaking your head, so I guess I'm making sense. Mm-hmm. You're understanding what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And while I had some sadness about that at the time, or maybe the better word is regret. Regret that I couldn't do it. I also had this very strong sense of the correctness of my decision. I think I speak for both of us, as we've spoken often of this, that the fire showed us a lot about our own resilience.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah. And that's borne out through the years. I mean, it showed us our resilience, and we acted on it. And I think we've built on that in terms of just our sense of ourselves as a couple, individually and as a couple.
I gotta say, we were solid.
Uh-huh.
We were solid. We actually felt totally together. And that doesn't mean that we didn't have differences of opinion, but they never got in the way of our. I mean, we always have known how to kind of negotiate.
Bob, what do you have to say about it now, 19 years later?
I would have rather gone to a movie.
Yeah.
Experience showed me how resilient I was. If you would ask me before the fire, how do you think you'd respond if something like this happened? I don't think I would have said, well, I deal with it, I snap right back. I surprised myself because Joan was still working, and I had to do all of that grunt work with the bank and with the insurance company.
You were really good at it, too. You were really good at it.
Thank you.
I imagine there were some people that had crushes on you, like they did with Joan. Did you use humor to get through the situation, or not necessarily?
No.
No.
No, I lost for a while.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was mad. Every time something went wrong, insurance company didn't come through, or the bank didn't come through. God, our little bank down on College, they were sort of overwhelmed, and they couldn't do what we wanted. They had to get approvals from Tennessee or something. And then they saw the people who didn't live in Berkeley or Oakland would evaluate the claims, and they couldn't believe that they were so high. They thought they were all rigged, We tell them, hey, this isn't the Ozarks. Things are expensive here. And that luckily could be validated, what real estate was selling for and all that.
But that wasn't so much the bank as it was the insurance company. And we didn't have any trouble with the insurance company in terms of the property, per se. Our personal property, which I knew that we had full replacement value on it, and they weren't coming through on that, and that's why we hired Levinson and Pillsbury. You know that firm? Arnie Levinson was our lawyer, and Pillsbury, whatever his name was, because Bill Rosenfeld got us there.
The stuff with the lawyers was a little overwhelming for me. I was about to say inquisitions. What
Depositions.
They felt like inquisitions.
Yeah. And then, of course, I thought the AAA was who we had then. They went out and they found some killer attorneys, brutal.
Yeah, we felt in those depositions like they were saying, so you started the fire, why? So you could get that painting back?
Yeah.
It had that flavor of blame.
I missed losing things more than Joan did because I knew they would have triggered memories.
Right.
In fact, that process stopped only recently, where I would pick up an object like a corkscrew, associate it with an event, buying it or using it. The long-lasting effect of the whole thing for me was the recognition of my resilience. The rest of it is not in my consciousness anymore. I have to work at it to bring it up. That's partly because of my age now anyway.
What's it like talking about it now?
I'm pretty dispassionate about it now. I don't have any feelings anymore.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't want to leave me alone with some of the people I had to deal with. Even when I was old enough to know better, I used to flare up. I remember one time a group of neo-Nazi people marching down Market Street when I happened to be there with my son. And David was probably in high school. And shit, I just wanted to run out there and start banging on him. And David said, they said, Dad, no.
So who would you like to do that to from the fire?
Luckily, yeah. So I probably found some of the better sides of myself and some of the worst sides.
We were the first people to return to this hill. It was pitch dark other than this house. There were no street lights.
Yeah.
There was nothing up here.
A while.
No trees, no nothing. That is a picture. We had a groundbreaking ceremony when we broke ground, and our friends and family and people stood right out here, and we had a ceremony.
Yeah.
And that's a picture from that with the builder.
Right.
As we were moving back in because we were the first people.
Yeah. So
back
13
on the
months.
entire hill. And we had Thanksgiving here 13 months after the fire. And that was quite a celebration. Yeah. And this is a picture that was in, I think, also the Phoenix Journal, of a groundbreaking ceremony that we had as we broke ground to rebuild 20 Treasure Hill. You look pretty cute in that.
Oh, yeah, that's my style.